Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
This is Vandy, as well back on another Card Fight Vanguard up profile. If you enjoyed, don't like, comment, subscribe, and don't to Patreon. Let's start, shall we? Today we are doing Dark States, Kheios. So, I've heard some opinions on Kheios. In some people's opinion, Kheios is bad because it requires you to have 13 or more different normal units, or just units in general, that are different named. In my opinion, what the hell are y'all complaining about? I don't know if it's just me and my luck, but with this exact deck build, I have literally never had a problem in hitting 13 different names in Soul. Like, I'm not going to do it on first grade 3 turn unless I actually go full tryhard, but I don't need to hit it on first grade 3 turn because I've never died before second grade 3 turn with this deck regardless of what deck I'm facing. Except that one time I fought Greedon and I got double critted to death, but that's different. So, I don't know what y'all are complaining about. Let's go ahead and get this deck before I start, and y'all can tell me what the hell the problem seems to be, because I don't see it. Or at least with this build, I don't. Anyways, we have our starter with 1 with Profound Mercy Kheios. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base, auto shield, punny for 1 second, draw a card. Here's my thing with the Kheios red line. I don't know why. They all look a lot different than I thought they would, but weirdly enough, outside of the grade 2, I really like their art aesthetic. Like, their backgrounds are so nice, their outfits are so, like, eye-catching. I don't know about this red line, but like the art itself really entices me into the deck, and I like the skills, even though I find them a little bit weird. So, that's our starter run with Profound Mercy Kheios, and yeah, you can run any starter you want, but this is probably the best one, especially if the grade 1 happens to have a skill with it, and I don't remember it at the moment, but let's go with this starter. Then we have our Overtrigger and Hades Dragon Deity of Resentment, Gallmageheld. Anyone who mains Dark Zone as a whole in Premium probably runs this as their trigger lineup because this thing is broken if you pull it early. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k base, Overtrigger, then 1 Overtrigger deck. When reveals a trigger, remove that card, draw a card, choose one of your gets plus 1 mana for the turn, and if you're voted during draft tech, activation effect, which is during your turn, you get all of your Vanguards get plus 10k in a crit until end of this fight. So you get that ability regardless if you ride or not. Your Vanguard's getting a constant plus 10 in a crit, which is really nice because that means if you pull it in the early game, like say for example, if you pull it while you're at grade 1, 95% of the time, no, let's bump that up, 99% of the time you have won the game. Like, every time I've pulled this on grade 1, I've won that same game. I know that's not guaranteed to always happen, but 99% of the time, if you pull this on grade 1 or grade 2, you are most likely winning the game. If you drive checked it, you are most likely going to win that game because they definitely didn't take, because unless they PG'd the attack preemptively, they definitely took that one. They are taking 2 damage, and every time your Vanguard swings, they're going to have to PG it, or at least 3 to pass it, because they're not taking that chance on you seeing 2 triggers, and it already has the extra crit on it. So Gallmageheld is an amazing overtrigger. I know some people run Obari outside of Greedon because it makes sense, and I understand. I prefer the extra critical. I think it's cool. I think in Kheios is especially helpful just because like Kheios can pump his rear guards with power. They don't really need it, and especially if you play this build, which once more, it's just weirdly consistent for some reason. At least for me, it's been. And Gallmageheld I prefer just because it gives Kheios some danger to it too, besides the 2 restanding rear guards. So 1 copy of Gallmageheld. Our trigger lineup normal is 3 crits in Flinty Slasher, 4 draws in Rouse, Wildmaster Riley, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base, draw changes guard circle if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 gets plus 5k shield, and 4 more crits in Steam Deviate, Dragon, grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k base, critical trigger, auto rear at the end of the battle boosted, show up to soul, choose one of your units, gets plus 2 for the turn. The one time I remember to use that, it won me a game, so that's really nice, not because of the 2k, but just because it counted as my last different name in Soul. And the heal trigger, Steam, Scara, Mal, Nigal. If you're wondering why I run the trigger lineup this way, 7 crits. 2 of your front row rear guards, if you play this right, are going to restand, and they're probably going to get plus 10. Once more, if your luck is as good as mine, pump the crits to them. They're already dangerous. Let's just make them more dangerous. Or just put it to Van, and they have to risk the overtrigger too. Draw trigger. You're going to need it. Not even going to explain why. I will explain why. Or at least for me, like from what I've had to do is I have to constantly get hand cards so I can keep calling cards. I can soul charge with different names and change out my hand cards with a very certain order in this deck. So that's why I run draw triggers. We don't run fronts because if in the situation where you see a front, you might have 13 or more soul, and the 13 or more soul would do a lot more than that, so you might as well try to make it consistently get more 13 or more soul that are just different names, rather than just get a front trigger that would only apply for the turn. That's my C on it. If you want to run fronts, go ahead, but I prefer the 7 crit 4 draw lineup. And then as for the heal, I've already made my claim about why I don't like counter heals. If you don't know why I don't like counter... If you don't know why I don't like counter heroes, go watch the Aurora deck profile or PBO deck profile or Tamarier deck profile. I don't remember which one has it. I know one of those 3 has it. So go watch one of those deck profiles and you will get my explanation on why I don't like counter heals. Anyways, that's our trigger lineup. On to grade 1s. So this deck has some weird lineups. I refuse to put stuff at 1. That's why if you think this deck is inconsistent because it doesn't have that many different names, so be it, but I refuse to put cards at 1 just to make a difference. So anyways, here's our grade 1 lineup. First up, we have 2 copies of Steam Battler Gungnram, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, no press on red, that's just a misprint on the English card. On placed on rearguard circle, so charge 1. Okay, free soul charge, downside is that's a mandatory soul charge, so that might deck you out quicker. I remember the first time I did that card, it immediately killed me because I didn't realize it was a mandatory, and I was 1 card short of winning the game, but that's how it is. And then I active rearguard once per turn, soul blast 3, draw a card. So here's some benefits out of this. First up, you get a free soul charge. That's good. Like, even if it's mandatory, it's a free soul charge. And not to mention the Soul Blast 3, sometimes you will have a bunch of extra names in soul. I've never had 3 extra names in soul unless I'm going pure tryhard. Then at the point where I'm about to win, yeah, then I've had 3 extra. But in the case where you have 3 extra, you can soul blast them, draw, and then hopefully get something that will soul charge something different. That's why I like Gungnram. He can unleash so many more potentials. And I would put him at 3, but I do want those different names, so I keep him down to 2 for that one reason. But he's still an amazing grade 1 in this deck, and I like him at 2. Then we have 2 copies of Brainwash Swirler, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto when it's placed on rearguard, soul charge 1. Another mandatory soul charge, but it's not that bad because auto rear, when a card is put into your soul by your soul charge effect, if your vanguards are grade 3, get plus 10, plus 5 for the turn, 10 if you soul charge 2. Now, that's good if you are going hyper soul charge. This deck is not hyper soul charge. This would be so good in Baron Magnus, but in this deck you don't hyper soul charge, especially because I don't run Pandemonium Tactics, and I will explain why later, but it's not here for that power. It is 1 here for a different name, 2 it's a free soul charge. And the other ability, and then the third ability, the other reason is the second ability. On the occasion, because first grade 3 turns when you start soul charging a lot, second grade 3 turns where you're doing a lot of micromanaging of the soul, first grade 3 turns where you go in that soul charge havoc. So Brainwash Swirler, first grade 3 turn, after that it's a bit slow, but that first grade 3 turn, that's your turn to start swinging for numbers. So, 2 of, if 1 ends up in your opening hand, play it the second you get to grade 3. Or maybe just play it right before you get to grade 3 because you're going to soul charge by an effect anyways. So 2 copies of Brainwash Swirler. You don't want to see too many of it, but also at the same time you want those different names. So 2 of. Then we have 4 copies of our PG Recusal. Hey Dragon, grade 1 boost, 5k, 0 shield, 6k base. Continue Sentinel, you have 4 Sentinels in your deck, and auto when it's placed on guard circle. Choose one of your units, it cannot be until the battle. And if your hand has 2 or more cards, choose a card from hand, discard it. Standard PG, nothing too special about it. If you don't know what that means that this and only one other card is in your hand when you put this on guard circle, you don't have to discard. So that allows you to be offensive and defensive at the same time. You can go as aggressive as you want, and the PG will stay back in your hand, and you'll be able to defend with it in the late game, and that's really good because Kheios involves you discarding a hand card, and, discarding a card. So, for some reason in Dark States, my trend that I notice just watching other people's videos and watching my own and just playing my own games is that whenever I see a Dark States deck discard cards, typically they debate for a second between discarding a PG and something else, and I can tell because their hand will firmly move over to the PG for a second and then hesitate there before moving away from it. It's weird, but Risco Hey Dragon's really nice. I think it's a good PG, and it's one of my favorite instances of art, so I give it a 4 of. Now on to our last grade 1, which is the grade 1 of the Ride deck in the Calm Streets Kheios. Also, for some reason, this is the card in the deck that gets the soul charge the most. So, when you're bouncing cards to hand from soul, this is your target. But anyway, back to the grade 1 in the Calm Streets Kheios. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, our Ride deck card. I love that little symbol right there. That's so amazing. The special symbol that is unique to only Kheios, which is unfortunate, but I love it so much. Anyways, auto when it's wrote upon by Quagmire of Solace Kheios, reveal the top 2 cards of your deck, put all normies from among them to your soul, and put the rest on bottom of the deck in any order. Glitter, it searches the fire regalias. So we still don't know what fire regalias are. I have an assumption of what they are, and I'll keep that to myself until the next set where we will most likely get a fire regalia will be revealed, but I will keep that opinion to myself. But as of that skill, okay, so focus on the grade 2 writing. It's free, which is nice, and you get to see the top 2 cards. Downsides are, if they're not normal units, they immediately go to bottom. If they're normal units, they immediately go to soul. So, unfortunately, you don't really have much of a choice of where they go and where they don't, just a matter of what they are. But that is really good because it could possibly net you 2 free soul that could be different names, and that means you're setting up early on your grade 2 turn for your first/second grade 3 turn on Kheios. So around, I like this grade 1 really a lot. It looks good. its skill is simple. I think a lot of people might overlook it, but I think it's really good. So 1 of in the ride deck, unfortunately none in the main deck. On to our grade 2s. 3 copies of Amazement Magician. I feel like at some point I said if there was a card that was just on attack, soul charge 1, I would run it. And I jokingly said I did that, and I'm pretty sure I jokingly said that. But I do, even though a lot of people might disagree with this, and it's actually a really good card. Anyways, grade 2, intercept 5k shield, 10k base, Amazement Magician. Auto rear, when it attacks, you may soul charge 1. It's that simple. It attacks rear guard, it attacks vanguard, fuck it can attack damage zone for all I care. You get a free soul charge. So here's my thing with this. First up, it's a may, so it's not a mandatory, so if you don't want a soul charge, you don't have to. Second off, it can literally hit anything. And the only downside to this card is that it's its only ability. This card is good. If you can't understand why, having a free non-mandatory soul charge in a deck that might need different soul names is really good. Like, for example, if you already have the 13 different names in soul, you're not going to soul charge. Thankfully, this doesn't force you to. But if you don't have them, you might think, okay, you know, I want to take that risk and soul charge because maybe it will give me that last name or an extra name that I don't have currently. And that soul charge might give you it. All around, Amazement Magician is really good. And I like it. And I give it a 3 of, because there's no reason not to give it a 3 of, because it's free. Then we have 3 copies of Selfish Engraver. Oh, I feel bad for running her at 4 because she's my favorite grade 2 in this deck, but okay. Grade 2, intercept 5k shield, 10k base, auto rear when this new attack hits, soul charge 1. So, like Amazement Magician, it can be anything, but it has to hit, unfortunately, and it's a mandatory soul charge. But then auto rear at the end of the battle, the attack, if your soul has 10 or more cards, you have to soul counter charge 1. Weirdly enough, this is the deck I don't see any copies of Selfish Engraver for, which makes me start thinking, was the other decks the only difference was that I run 4 Selfish Engraver? And then I think about it, it can't be, because I always see at least 2 each game. This is the only deck I don't, so I'm starting to question why. But, yeah, Selfish Engraver, because the one I see it the least, it never ends up in soul, so that free soul charge is always amazing with on hit, but also it can send itself to soul, and typically I don't have it in soul, so that's just an extra free soul, and I get to countercharge out of it for next turn. All around, Selfish Engraver is an amazing card, and I like it. It's a 3 of, and in any Dark States deck that isn't Bruce, and agreed on, you should run it at 3. We all know I'm right, don't argue with it. Then we have 4 copies of Indecade Arrow Dragon, I think one of the few cards in this deck at 4. Grade 2, intercept 5k shield, 10k base. Every time I look at this card, I notice something different about it. Like, first, obviously, I noticed it was a gear card. Then this time I noticed, well, last time I looked at it, I noticed this right here. And then this time, I noticed this, which just seems to look like a gun to me, or like just another version of this. Also, I like its wings. But anyways, grade 2, intercept 5k shield, 10k base. Auto, when it's placed on rear guard, circle, reveal the top card of your deck. If your soul has no card with the same card name as that card, soul charge it. So, and if it does, then it just stays at top. But that's really good, because that either means you get a sneak peek at your draft check, and granted your opponent will see it too, so they get to plan around their guarding a bit, but hey, you get to plan around your moves a bit, and if they just shoot it past your vanguard, then you know you're not breaking through it. But the good news is, that could possibly just net you a free soul charge, and you get to be a little bit preemptive about your plays. Like, for example, if your player involved you sacking 2 triggers this turn, and the top card isn't a trigger, but you didn't get to soul charge it, well, at least you know it's not happening, so you can be a little bit more defensive. So 4 copies of Indecade. It's an amazing grade 2, and I like it. It's free. It literally costs no counterblast, which is a common theme I've noticed in this deck, where the only card in this deck that actively costs counterblast, I think, might be the main grade 3, and the order, so you can do whatever the fuck you want with these cards. So 4 of Indecade. I think that's what we can all agree on this deck. 4 of. And then we move on to our last grade 2, Quagmire of Solace Kheios. Grade 2, intercept 5k shield, 10k base. I really love that big ass snake in the background, despite the fact I question it. He is the card I hate, though. I like everything about him except his face. Anyways, auto when it's rode upon by approaching Fangs, Kheios, soul charge 1. If the soul charge card was a trigger, draw a card. If it was a normal, you choose a card from your soul call to rear guard. Glitter, it searches the 5 regalias. So, here are my things with this card. First up, once more, only requires a specific grade 3, which I do hate about some cards, but A, it's fine because it gets you a literal free soul charge, which is, as I evidenced earlier with this card, is just good. And then, not to mention, if it's a trigger, you get a plus off it in terms of a draw, so you didn't really discard for your ride deck. And if it was a normal unit, you get to call a card from soul. Thankfully, it says up to and doesn't force you to, because if it forced you to, this thing would just be counterintuitive, but it's good. It's good. There's no reason not to run it in the ride deck. 1 of in the ride deck. Now, before I move on, you guys may be wondering why am I not running the grade 2 that I said I would run. It's kind of like blue dust, but but in D. I don't remember what it's called. I think it's called Freeze or something. The reason why I don't run it is just because, like, I was going to, but then I thought about it. This deck has been so incredibly consistent all the games I've played with it, and I've genuinely played, like, granted, only 50 games, and 50 isn't a lot to go off of considering my normal, like, BS amounts of games that I play and or see with it, but this deck is weirdly enough consistent the way it is, which I don't believe, but okay. And I don't want to risk that formula being changed for a card that I want purely out of artwork and nothing else. So I like this deck as the way it is. If you think it's gonna change with the consistency with you, change the cards to fix that. But for me, this deck literally works perfectly, and I don't understand why. Anyways, on to grade 3s. 2 copies of Time Jarett Dragon, grade 3, 10 Persona Red, 13k base. Auto, when it's placed on rearguard circle, put a hand card to soul, draw a card. That is... Here's the thing, I never run this card in the deck that people tell me to, and yet I run it in this one where I've seen no one running it. And the reason why I run it here is because hand card. Weirdly enough, the cards I have in hand are sometimes the cards that end up in soul the least, and that's because, low copy amount. For example, Selfish Engraver. Here's the weird thing I've noticed with Selfish Engraver. Either I will get the 1 copy in hand and the other 2 will hit damage, or 2 of them will hit damage and the other one will end up in soul. So, it's always a matter of if I have it in hand or not. If I don't have it in hand, then typically Time Jarett Dragon if it's not in soul, Time Jarett Dragon just gets it for me, because normally it would be in hand at that point, and it's just a free plus out of it, so there's no reason not to run it. I put it as 2 of 1 because different names, you still want to see other cards. It's not the most important card in this deck, but he is literally the best toolbox getter in this entire deck, and there's no reason not to run him out of 2. Then we have 4 copies of Cool-Headed Executioner Mikani, grade 3 200 Persona and 13k base. Auto when it's placed on rearguard circle, counterblast 1, soul blast 1, choose one of your opponent's rearguards with the same grid as a card for the soul blast cost and retire it. Basically, soul blast to grade 2, kill a grade 2, soul blast to grade 3, kill a grade 3, soul blast to grade 1, kill a grade 1, soul blast to grade 0, kill a grade 0. You specifically have to soul blast per grade. It is not grade or less or equal to. It has to be equal to. And then Glitter, Kheios if your Vanguard is a glitter with Kheios in its card name. Auto rear, once per turn when your Vanguard attacks, if your soul has 8 or more different card names, regardless of the normal units or not normal units. Weirdly enough, it just says 8 or more different card names, which means they can also be orders. Stand this unit, and if you stand this unit, put this unit into the soul at the end of the turn. So he can get you soul of a different name, which is really nice, and not to forget the fact he can stand himself. And while it is once per turn, it is not once per turn per name, which means if you call 2 of them to the front row, you got double restands. There is the card, I forgot what it's called. I believe it's called Con U, where you can shove it to soul, give someone +2, and if you have 7 or more soul, like they can't guard grade 1 or graders. I say if you want to run it, that's a good card, and you can replace it with Brainwash Swirler, but once more, consistency problems, and I don't want to take that chance, so I'm going to stick with the current build I have, but Mikani can be a lot more dangerous if you put Con U with it, but I prefer it this way just because Brainwash Swirler can make the numbers a lot fucking bigger than Con U could. And then our last normal unit in the deck is our main grade 3, 3 copies in the main deck, 1 copy in the red deck of Approaching Fangs Kheios. Grade 3, 10 Persona at 13k base, and my friend has PTSD from this card. Not because of Kheios himself, but because of these fuckers. Really long personal story, but he has PTSD from these, so we're gonna not get into that. If you want to know the story, then I'll tell you privately, but we'll deal with that on another occasion. Active Vanguard Circle, once per turn, counterblast 1, discard card from your hand, look at top 3, choose up to 1 card from among them, choose 1 card from among them, put it to hand, choose up to 1 unit card from among them, call it to rear, and put the rest to soul. So, you can't call in order, but it can allow you to call any card from among them to rear. You don't have to, but if you don't, then 2 cards go to soul. Unfortunately, they force you to send a card to hand, which I question of all places for them to force you to send a card to, why is it the hand? But okay, sure. So you guaranteedly get a free hand card, or to at least replace the discard, and you are sending at least 1 card to soul. You can possibly send 2. So I really like Kheios. He can net you 2 cards. I don't know. I've seen people's opinion on this. They say it's not that good. I don't understand why. Like, you're counterblasting 1, exchanging a hand card, and netting possibly 2 soul. Because half the time I don't even call rearguard off this, and I don't need to, because normally the rearguard I would call is already in my hand. So, or the card I just added. So that's the thing with Kheios. And then Auto Van, when it attacks a Vanguard, if your soul has 8 or more different card names. So it doesn't involve units, which means it cuts the 1 order that I run in this deck. Choose one of your rear guards, it gets +10 for the turn. And if your soul has 13 or more cards with different names, choose all your rear guards instead. So, and it glitter seeks with Fire Gale is. So, If it swings, typically first grade 3 turn, just plus 10 to 1 unit. If second grade 3 turns, typically 13 or more, gets plus 10 to your entire rear guard. So that makes this at least hit for something in the 30s minus persona rides. And all your rear guards are, and these restanding motherfuckers are at least swinging for 23. So all around, this card's good, and I like it. I think it's a nice grade 3. 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the red deck. I also like the background because it reminds me of Inazuma 11 Silk Road. And while it's not my favorite Inazuma 11 move, it's definitely the favorite Inazuma 11 move of one of the people I like watching Inazuma 11 content for. So that's why I also like this card. And then the last card in the deck in general is 2 copies of Supernatural Extraction. A lot of you are going to be saying, what the fuck am I doing? I should be running Pandemonium Tactics. My response to you is go to hell. Grade 3, normal order, play by counterblasting 1 and discarding 1, soul charge 3. Then if your soul has 10 or more cards, choose a card from your hand. Sorry, choose a card from your soul and put it to hand. This is why I won that. If you want to know why, here's why. Pandemonium Tactics. 1, if you know me, I hate running cards that I cannot use the full ability of. Pandemonium Tactics, most of its ability does not go off if you're not using it in a final rush. I'm not putting a card that I cannot fully use the abilities of in a deck. So if I'm only going to run it for the Soul Charge 4, it's not being worth running in my deck. Or that's my personal thing. I'm not calling anyone out. I'm just saying. But the other reason why is the logical reason is even though it's 1 less soul, you are swapping a hand card with a card in your soul. And that is really good because this deck will get you a lot of extra soul sometimes of the same names, so you can take that chance to get those extra names out of your soul and use them for defensive, aggressive purposes. Like in Pandemonium Tactics would only be a soul charge 4 vanilla. Supernatural Extraction, same cost, 1 less card, so you're not decking yourself as fast, and can allow you to get extra names out of soul for a good purpose instead of just leaving them in there for no apparent reason. That's the reason why I run Supernatural Extraction. If you want to argue that point, you can argue it. If you want to run Pandemonium Tactics over it, you can, but this is my preference of choice. And that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. Honestly, this deck is really fun. Like, they're not fun. I would say it's in the middle of fun and like not fun. Because during the early game, I don't really find it fun. Once I get to main grade 3 Kheios, it seems to just chunk up in the enjoyed a bit. I don't know why. Some people say this deck is hard to build. I literally did not struggle to build this at all. I thought about it for 2 minutes, and that's because I was just trying to read through every Dark States card I remotely cared about, so it's not that hard to build it. If you're struggling to build it, use this build, because consistently it works well for me. I know my style doesn't work for everyone. If you want to use a different deck, or like use a different lineup compared to mine, go ahead. I don't see offense to it. And it's a good deck. So all around, hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join Patreon, join Discord, follow Twitch on C1. Don't forget to stand up your vanguards.